Don't change your channel.
Come on! Catch! Jolly good.
Welcome to Editors on Editing. I'm Glenn Garland. Steve Mirkovich has edited such striking and varied films as Big Trouble in Little China, Con Air, I Know What You Did Last Summer, 16 Blocks, and Risen. Now he has crafted the mind-bending and adrenaline-filled Hardcore Henry. Steve, thank you very much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. The movie just blew my mind. It was really fantastic.
It was a fun picture to do. It really was.
How did you get involved with this film?
The producer on the picture, Timur Bekmambetov, had mentored Ilya Naishuller, the director of Hardcore Henry, and they had shot about 90 days of footage up to that point.
90 days.
90 days, which was an enormous amount of film.
Yeah.
And then when they finished that, and they brought the picture back here, they contacted my agent and wanted to know who they felt would be good for this. Take a look and who wouldn't be intimidated by an enormous amount of footage. So they called me, which I was happy about. I looked at it, and it totally blew me away.
Yeah, what was your impressions?
I've never seen anything quite like it. I've never cut anything like it. And it was a little overwhelming at first. It was like I was laughing because I was kind of shocked by what I was seeing. I thought, well, how do you do this?
Well, what was your process? Because instead of staying in one shot, you chose to jump through space and time, which I thought was fantastic because it wouldn't have had that same rush of energy.
When I originally saw the footage, as an editor, as you know, Glenn, you build scenes around performance. I pick performances. I try to figure out where I want to be, how I can build a scene around performance. So it's really important to me to relate to the character and to get into the character's head. So when I looked at this, I thought, how on earth am I going to relate to somebody that I, number one, never see? Number two, he does not have a voice box, so I can't hear him either. So how do you like somebody? How do you get into the performance and the selects on somebody that you never see?
Well, that's what I thought was so brilliant about this movie, because you felt like you were in the mindset of Henry.
We all became Henry. And what happened was, since we're audiences as well as editors, I think they go hand in hand. We all tell stories. And I tried to put it in reverse and say, all right, I've got to cut to the reactions of those that I'm fighting. I've got to cut to my surroundings. I've got to cut to the opposite of what I would normally do. It sounds kind of kooky, but that's what it felt like. I felt like I was always trying to figure out how to add those extra frames to somebody so I make sure that their reaction tells me, the audience, what I'm seeing. And so it was a really different way to cut. People are going to think that I'm either really good at what I do or I'm a hack, one or the other, because basically that picture, Hardcore Henry, is like a 90-minute action scene, only it all goes in one direction. It's literally a 90-minute jump cut. The entire picture basically is a jump cut. And I thought, how am I supposed to do this without making it feel that way?
In there. Yeah, in there. So, your name's Henry, and... Okay, well, the good news is that you're going to live a while.
You figure that moments into it, people are going to start getting bored. So the pace is accelerated. The choreography was fantastic. I mean, Ilya did a great job. He's brilliant as far as I'm concerned. He's not infected. He's such a nice guy, and he's a very calm presence, and he works hard. And he's a young guy that doesn't know his boundaries. And maybe it's because they were shooting in Russia, where maybe they have fewer boundaries than we have here in terms of safety and all of that. I mean, it was jaw-dropping. When you see somebody running across the top of a bridge, there's no wires on that. There's no safety harnesses. These guys are running across a girder 150 feet in the air.
Wow.
And you just go, whoa, and they do it take after take, and...
What was the shooting ratio on some of this stuff?
I can't even tell you how many hours of footage there is. Some days we'd get 5 hours of footage. Other days there was less, but you know, they shot for 100 days plus, you know.
Wow.
And so the ratio is probably pretty dramatic, you know. People are used to seeing GoPro cameras on either somebody's shoulder or up on their head. And what they did is they built a special rig to go around both eyes, and there was one in each eye. So the cameraman or men, whoever happened to be the specialist in that particular scene, a guy that runs on girders, a guy that goes through fire, a guy that gets kicked downstairs. There's a specialty for everything, I guess, in the stunt world.
Now, normally, they would take the actual window out and they would put safety glass in. Here in Russia, we just bought this old bus, and everybody's hoping that this glass is going to be okay when he comes out.
There were several DPs. And when they had these lenses in front of their eyes, it was kind of like blinders. They had to look straight ahead through the lens. They couldn't there was no peripheral.
These stuntmen were doing these kind of
That's right.
stunts without seeing.
That's right. Yeah, and it's kind of boggling. Even now, after I came onto it and I cut for 7+ months on the picture, 7 days a week, for week and week and week and crazy hours because it was just infectious. The director and I would sit down and, you know, all of a sudden it'd be midnight or 1 o'clock. We've all been there. And it was hard because we were tired, but it was always exhilarating at the same time because what we were doing was just so different. And, you know, when you're shooting with GoPros, the way these were, every time there's a footstep, there's a vibration. Every time there's a whip pan because he wants to see something. Every time there's a POV shift or a change, those are my cutting points. I found that I was always looking for a slight imperfection. In a normal picture, you'd go, oh, we got to get rid of that. We have to cut around that. Well, that's what I was cutting to and from. And it appeared, I mean, I don't know how many cuts there are in a picture, but there's a lot. Because it may look seamless by the time the audience looks at it. There's a lot of cuts, you know? I mean, it was difficult. It was probably the most challenging picture that I've ever cut in terms of creative choices, trying to find cutting points, and not make them feel or look arbitrary. You know, you want to always cut for a reason. You want to be somewhere for a reason. And, you know, when you're doing it looking all the same direction, it's pretty challenging.
Yeah, because sometimes you're forward, but then sometimes you would cut on pans and things like that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you would have glitches. Fortunately, you didn't overuse that. You just had a few of those just to sort of get the sense of sometimes he's just disoriented.
Exactly. Somebody gets hit in the head with a baseball bat, it glitches, you know, because that's the way it was, especially if it was Henry, because he's an android. So he had electricals in his head.
Henry pulls out these charges from a stun gun,
Right.
and you put like the static in to show like him being jolted by the static.
As the audience tries to become Henry, as the editor, you try to be Henry as well. You know, there's no other way to do this.
So you were just in the mindset of being Henry.
Basically, yeah. I mean,
Which in a way you are, because from an audience standpoint, you're just like, who is this Jimmy guy? What's going on? Okay, where's the audience now? What information do I hold back? What information do I give them?
Yeah.
So when you were cutting, did you watch first-person shooter games, or did you have any familiarity with them?
No. I've never been a gamer. I've never been somebody that sits in front of a set and just, you know, it was very fresh for me. I had no preconceptions of what it should be, or how I should treat it, or how I should present it. It just, whatever felt good in the gut is what we did.
There were like 12, 14 visual effects companies
There were a
that
lot.
were listed.
There were a lot. The visual effects were an enormous part of this picture.
Yeah.
I don't believe when they were shooting they really expected it to be as much in terms of visual effects as it was. They didn't plan for that very well, so everything was done in post. I mean, everything from the simplest monitor to green screens to wire removals. There was just so much done in post, it was kind of nuts. When somebody says, how many visual effects were there? I could say between 1,000 and 2,000, because I'm used to when you're doing a picture, you have a shot or a cut, and maybe it's a 3 seconds long or less, you know, and that's a visual effect. Well, we would have a sequence that's 3 minutes long, and they'd count it as one visual effect, but there might be 500 visual effects in that 3 minutes. So I don't know if anybody has a true count to be honest with you. Ken Bartlett was one of the assistants. He left the picture. Ben Bodwin came in. Jeff Senker came in. Once I left to do another picture, we had almost locked the cut at that point. So we brought somebody in, William Ye, for the director, to do a few trims and to bring a few ideas to the game. And then finally, Tommy Bernard, who oversaw, along with our visual effects supervisor, cutting in, viewing, showing to the director the visual effects as they were coming in, which took months and months and months.
And were a lot of the explosions and a lot of the debris and all that added?
Some of the explosions and debris were added or enhanced, but there was a lot of fire. There was a lot of practical stuff. This was done in Russia, and they blow things up there. The amount of people and stunt work and bodies flying everywhere. This was all choreographed. It wasn't one of those things where all of a sudden there were more people added from visual effects. Those were all real people doing real things all at the same time. It was pretty staggering, you know, the amount of choreography that was involved. You know how we all call our favorite sound effects guys who we can talk into, can you just do a little sequence for me? And you know, I call Sean McCormick and Kami Oscar from 424 Post quite a bit in those, and they always roll their eyes, but they always say, yeah, okay. And when I send them the sequence, one of the opening battle sequences where, you know, there's like, I don't know, 100 guys against Henry, I sent it to them, and they were absolutely, they got on the phone with me, are you kidding me? You know, what do you want me to do with this? I said, well, can you just do some temp stuff? And, you know, and then they involved Kevin O'Connell for the temp, and they whipped together this thing, and it was like brilliant. And ever since they did that, everybody who worked on it, on temp sequences for me, they were hooked. They couldn't wait to work on the film.
Well, the sound design was really sophisticated for an indie.
It was a big dollar, big time-consuming, big stage. You know, I mean, Kevin is like a 20-time Oscar nominee. You know, Kami and Sean, they do big movies. Kevin O'Connell and Bo Borders were our mixers. And I mean, it was all first-rate, big-time sound guys. I tried to feed it into the producers from the very get-go that this picture was going to be all about sound and picture. And it sounds like that's what every picture's about, but it really was important. And, you know,
so important. And even in the quiet scenes, it you know, it wasn't just the chaos.
This next part might hurt.
Did you have a concern that, especially on a big screen, all the shaky cam was going to be too much for an audience?
You know,
and did you edit for it?
I didn't have that concern because I was getting used to it, I think, you know. If it bothered me, then I figured it would bother an audience.
Were you speed ramping things?
I probably did, I'm guessing 500, 600, 800. I mean, there was more speed ramps in there than I've ever done on anything. And probably in that picture, more speed ramps in that picture than I had in 30
and that was
pictures
just to
prior.
accelerate the pace and keep...
Yeah, just to bring, you know, like when something started, it was like, bam. You know, you couldn't keep things at one speed because visually it just doesn't hold, you know. But if you vary the pace and you build a rhythm where, you know, things happen unexpectedly a little faster in some cases, and in some cases they slow down a little bit, keeping the audience off balance so that they don't know what to expect.
Well, that was one of the things that I thought was great, was that each action scene felt fresh, even though it's a POV. You varied the pace in different sequences so it didn't feel like, okay, here we go with the same type of action scene.
That's nice to hear, and I'd like to take all the credit for it, but that's the collaborative nature, sitting with the director, and instinctually you're just going to cut it the way you feel. You know, we all tell stories differently. You know, we didn't have any rules. It's not a picture about rules. I mean,
well, that was nice,
you know,
that you threw out the rules and you weren't going, well, you know, what's going to be the seamless way to do it? You made it seamless, but it wasn't like, okay, well, we have to only cut when there's whip pans, or we have to only cut when there's...
You know, sometimes jump cuts were okay. Once you got the audience used to seeing how you're going to tell the story, boy, they're forgiving. They just let things happen and they accept what you throw in front of them. And that's, I think, one reason the picture succeeds the way it does.
I liked a lot of the transitions that you chose too, because there were times that instead of in a first person, you might think, okay, we're going to now get into the car. Jimmy would say something like, I got me Charlie Chaplin, and then you cut and they'd be driving.
Is your speech module installed? Shit. Well, at least we know you're not deaf. It's all right, you can put your hands down now. 3 years I've been waiting for this moment. I'll get Charlie Chaplin.
Or you'd go from day to night inside a car with a POV, or they'd hit the clutch and you'd be on the road.
The whole nature of the way the picture was developing and how it went into overdrive right from the beginning, almost. It allowed you to do things that were bolder choices. Instead of walking an audience through a sequence and a timetable, you were literally kicking their ass from one sequence to the next. You were just pushing them in there, take it or leave it, and the audience went with it. Well, no matter what you throw at them, the audiences laugh nervously about it. They think it's outrageous. It's, for some, it may be too violent, but it does it in a very tongue-in-cheek and camp way. You know, the violence isn't serious, but it's seriously violent. There's nothing normal about the pace. It's jerky. Again, it's a pull and a push and a shove your way through scene after scene.
Well, it kept it fresh. Like when they're downstairs and he's fighting the guys in the subway, and it's really chaotic. You're going full adrenaline, and then suddenly the phone rings and everything stops. And those types of things were so fresh and fun.
That, again, is the kind of choreography and timing that the director brings to it. You know, the stunt work, I mean, when they're climbing buildings or falling out of buildings or thrown off the bridge, for instance. Henry's beat up by a Russian guy and he's basically tasered over an overpass. That was real. I mean, that was
So
not a visual
a
effect.
stunt
That was
guy
a GoPro.
fell-
He went backwards and landed in, you know, whatever it was.
What about falling off the helicopter down into the trees? Was that just dropping a GoPro?
Yeah, that was, yeah. And that worked great too. You know, and if you actually thought about some of the things that Elia tried and somehow pulled off, you just wouldn't do that. I hope he never loses that unconventional edge that he has. And he's not trying to be edgy. He's just trying to have fun.
There's this chase scene that's beautifully cut, and it's just got so much energy. And it's fun because some of the cuts were on wipes, and then other ones were jump cuts. And the fact that you were varying them kept the audience on its toes.
We did some pickup shots just to make the transitions from, say, him going through a tunnel and his point of view. He looks down to make sure he's going to step off something. When he lifts back up, he's in another location. You know, some people notice that, some people don't.
I like the choice when Henry goes into the strip club and he's losing energy, to have the red glitches. The length of them and the fact that they're different than what we've seen before really made you feel like you were powering down like Henry.
Again, it's just how you interpret a story. And it was instinctually, what do we want to do here? If it was us powering down, if we had 20 minutes of life left, if we had 3 minutes of life left, it just felt natural. It just felt natural. We wanted to see some things through those glitches, as if you were blinking and losing, you know, clouding your vision, so to speak.
Well, another scene that seemed very well planned, and I was wondering how much it varied in the cut, was the montage of the different avatars. When he's singing the song, it seemed very choreographed. Did he shoot tons of different things?
He did shoot a couple of versions. We actually cut verses out of the song to make it a bit shorter. And it was a big if. That picture, that scene was in the picture, out of the picture, in the picture, out of the picture. We just couldn't figure it out.
It's a complicated scene. It's really effective.
It's a complicated scene, and I personally didn't know, gauging that this nonstop action picture, that's probably skewed for a younger demographic. How are they going to feel about these guys singing this song? I'm not sure when that song was made, but it's old.
Tell me about the levitating scenes. Was that visual effects or?
No. When Aiken, the blonde villain, comes in, blows the door open, and he levitates a character named Tim, who he levitates and then, slices his throat up, That's the director, by the way. That is Elia. Yeah, he actually played 2 or 3 parts where he got killed throughout the movie. Because I don't know if it was budgetary or just like the idea of getting killed. The levitating was all wires that were removed later. Yeah, I would say 90% of it was wires.
Yeah.
So it was choreographed.
And there's even a woman who flies into the camera. And
Wires,
stuff like
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and they threw her. I mean, yeah.
What about when he's looking through the rifle scope? Was that shot with special lenses or?
No,
sort
that
of
was done. We
post?
added the scopes. We added the fisheye kind of look and feel.
It almost seems like you jump into the scope.
We would use the camera movements. This is one thing we learned to do on this picture, is that you use movement instead of trying to avoid it to your advantage. I can't take what I learned on that picture and apply it to what I'm doing now. It's just, it's a different animal.
Yeah.
It's a different animal. It's different than anything I've cut, and I can't imagine doing anything quite like it again. However, it makes me unafraid to select and try things. I mean, if you're a guy that thinks you don't want to try everything, then this is not the picture for you to be cutting.
One of my favorite sequences is when Henry's on the roof and he's fighting like 100 of these robot
Is this
soldiers.
at the beginning or at the end?
Towards the end, he's
Okay.
on the roof and he
Right.
jumps into this small space. And you're like, how the hell is he going to get out of this? And it's just so crazy, so chaotic.
And of course, there's windows all the way around it so that you can see all the people who are going to come in through the windows. And it's loaded. It's a munitions room. It's loaded with every kind of gun you can imagine, boxes of grenades, and they all come at him at once. And he just finds a way.
And you were just cutting between all these
Yeah,
guys.
gun
coming
this,
in.
gun that, exploding body, guys on the roof. Let's take him down. And eventually, when the swarm becomes so big that he can't do anything about it, he takes a box of grenades and just throws them, and then bails out, and the whole place goes up in a giant explosion.
What was your favorite sequence?
There's so many. The motorcycle chase, and of course, it's not like a little rat-a-tat-tat gun. It looks like a Gatling gun. They come up, they just blow the holy hell out of this thing.
It seems like the explosion actually went into the stuntman at one
Yeah,
point.
it does feel that way. When they actually come up to the back of that van and then blow the doors open and out the front of it, it blows the front of the van out. And I mean, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
I mean, who thinks of stuff like this?
What about blowing up the GoPro to be on a big screen? It looked
Well, it was
good.
1920 by 1420. So, I mean, in one way it was good, but you did have to blow into it. It wasn't even that you had to blow in so much. Everything, because it's a square picture. So you obviously you're going to have to blow.
So you lost a lot on the top and the.
Yeah, but
and
there
bottom.
was a huge process of not pan and scanning like say in the old days, but repositioning cuts and just being where you wanted to be.
What do you feel was the greatest challenge of this movie?
Just trying to wrap yourself around how to cut it. How do you get into a character that you can't see and doesn't talk? We try to say, well, we'll make sure that we really pay attention to his breathing so that we can feel something when he goes through something painful. We may have cheated a vocalized grunt here and there, which is a total cheat because he didn't have a voice box. But we had to do some things. Notice when he scales up a wall, there's a couple of efforts in there, but there was a real sense of humor in this picture, and I don't know if that was Charlton who brought it all in, if it was some things that Henry did.
It was everything. I mean, some of it was the sound design, some of it was the music, some of it was the energy.
Yeah,
of
well,
the
the
pace,
energy was great.
stopping the pace.
Yeah, and the other was just the volume of footage and the amount of choices, and establishing some kind of pace, and is it natural, is it artificial? It's all of those things. It's rare to work on something that you really feel is significantly different than any other picture you've ever done.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it,
Good.
and I thought it was terrific.
Well, I hope there's a lot of you out there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's no stopping me. Running through the sky. 200 degrees, that's why they call me Mr. Fahrenheit. I'm traveling at the speed of light. I wanna make a supersonic man out of you.
Are you gonna lay there?
Don't stop me, don't stop me. Hey.
Swallow that blood in your mouth?
Supersonic man out of you. Stop me now. I'm having such a good time.